We're going to move on now to the question of origin. Where was the letter written from? Destination, where is it going? And who was receiving it? Its recipients. So, origin, Peter in the very end, in chapter 5, I think it's verse 12, says, "She who is in Babylon greets you." And that's generally a way of saying where he's writing from. Extends greeting from where he's from. So he claims to be writing from Babylon. Now, there is no evidence that Peter was ever in the sort of historic city or area of Babylon and Mesopotamia. We don't think he was ever there. And I don't think there's any need to think that he was writing from the historic city of Babylon. In the early church, Babylon was often used to refer to Rome. And this is a way of linking, which makes sense in Peter's letter, of linking Israel to the church and saying that as, in a sense, as Israel was a sojourner in Babylon, so the church now is a sojourner in earth under this empire of Rome. And of course, being a foreigner, a sojourner, is going to be a very important part of Peter's letter. So I think he's writing it from Rome. He says that he's writing it to the people in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. And I'm going to get very high tech now and show you where that is. Right? So here is a map of what is called Asia Minor, and that's in this area here. We see Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. It's now what we find in Turkey. This is modern day Turkey, and right along the western coast here, we will find it fairly heavily populated. When we're early centers of the church, we will find places like Ephesus will be there. And so these are places, and along the southern part of Asia Minor, these are places where the apostles traveled and established churches there. In the eastern part, in the northeastern parts, however, these are very sparsely populated areas. There's not any large centers of population or governance in these areas. In fact, as well, we don't really have evidence in Peter's day of there being established churches there in much of the area that he mentioned, Bithynia, Pontus, in those sorts of areas. We don't know of churches there in Peter's day, which is sometimes also used as an argument against Petrine authorship, saying why would he be writing to large tracts of areas where we don't know of any Christians there, and because we just don't see that until later in the late first centuries or late first century. Some scholars, though, point to the fact that these areas, these large tracts of northwestern Asia Minor, were under sort of an attempt by the Roman Empire to colonize, to bring sort of Roman rule and presence more prominently to that area in the early first century. And the Romans did that by a couple of ways, or one major way, right? So they established colonies, and there was an effort to establish a number of colonies in that northwestern or northeastern part of Asia Minor in the first century. And they did that in some ways by offering incentives to people in Rome or the area of Rome who potentially maybe were of lower status or did not have full citizenship in Rome to go and live in these colonies, and so to establish a Roman presence there. And it's thought that quite possibly Christians, many of whom were Jewish, and had a lower status and were sometimes not welcome in Rome because of their evangelization, who were sort of disrupting the peace, they would have been encouraged to leave Rome and go places like the colonies. In fact, in some cases, foreigners, Jews, foreign Christians would have been expelled from Rome. Not just the Christians and Jews, there were others who were expelled from Rome, but there were sort of expulsions of foreigners from Rome in the first century, and often these would travel to other places like the colonies. So it's quite possible that the church grew up in this more remote area of Asia Minor through expulsions from Rome. It's also in the Sermon on Pentecost, when there's all the people from the world are coming to Jerusalem for that. There are a number of these places. I know Cappadocia, Asia, and I can't remember, maybe Bithynia were mentioned as places from which Jews had come. So it's possible that some of the Jews who were there from these regions during Pentecost also went back and established churches there as well. But if it were the sort of the colonization route and the expulsion from Rome route, we do know that Peter went to Rome, and he might well have known some of the people there who had gone off in the colonies or had been expelled from Rome, and so he might be writing not just to people there in churches that he's never been, as far as we know, to these areas, but he might have met these people in Rome before they had left for the colonies, which would also once again make some sense of the theme that he will talk about and we'll look at later, of being a foreigner, a sojourner, a stranger in a foreign land. In 1 Peter, there'd be something that these people, if they were indeed had been sent from Rome, they would know that what he was talking about firsthand. So he's writing from Rome. He's writing to these parts of Asia Minor. Who are the people he's writing to? Obviously Christians. Maybe he knows them, maybe he doesn't. One of the questions asked often, is he writing to Jews or is he writing to Gentiles? Initially, at the very beginning of the letter, he says he's writing to those who are elect exiles of the dispersion. Right? Now, this sounds very similar, if you remember, to the opening of James, who James says he's writing to the dispersion, the diaspora among the Jews. And it's quite clear in James's case, it seems quite clear that he is writing to Jews who are dispersed abroad. And James, the bishop of Jerusalem, has that responsibility to care for the Jewish, and he feels that the Jewish diaspora as well. And so some argue that Peter's doing the same. Peter is sometimes referred to as the apostle to the Jews, and so they say he's writing to the Jews who have been dispersed throughout Asia Minor. That's not quite as clear to me. The church does, in the early days, seem to take up that idea of diaspora and transfer it from just the Jews also to just Christians in general, Jews and Gentiles, to be those who are the people of God who are spread out throughout the world, still not in their home, still awaiting their home. And it seems to me that it is kind of difficult to peg Peter as simply an apostle to the Jews. We remember it is through him, through Peter first, that we have Cornelius and the first Gentile converts to Christianity through Peter. And in the First Peter itself, we will see he refers to the people he's writing to as people who were once living a lifestyle that would not have fit a Jewish lifestyle, as being pagans and living in ways that are very much not Jewish. So it's thought now that he's probably writing to just Christians in Asia Minor, Jews and Gentiles, whoever might take this letter and find it. He's simply writing to those. Maybe who've come from Rome, maybe from other places, but are believers in Christ, and he's writing to them. So once again, he's writing from Rome. I think, writing to areas of Asia Minor, including large tracts of area to where apostles, as far as I know, have not yet been. Um, there have been apostles along that southern route in some parts of Asia along the west coast, but most of that area we have no evidence, as far as we know, of missionary activity at this point. And so, largely, it may be Christians who have migrated there, who are foreigners, aliens in this land, and Peter's writing out to them to sort of stay in touch, to make sure they have oversight. They know that they're still connected to the broader body, though they may feel quite isolated and alone. Um, and so that is the context, I think, in which we find this letter. We'll move on to the next part now.